Yeah, I'm live. Gotta stay alive, gotta stay good, gotta survive, gotta stay strong like wood. Steel can melt. So, yeah, getting into it. Welcome to the live edition. Not switching, staying real. You know how I feel if you're tuned in. So, as I begin, preview what I'm going to talk about, preview what I'm going to get into. Gonna look at the trending news when it comes to money, when it comes to business. Gonna look at really, the top trending thing really is J. Crew, which is a retailer clothing company. They filed for bankruptcy. Basically, reason that's such big news is because they're really like the first big retailer that has had to file bankruptcy due to the pandemic. But yeah, I can't really call it what it is because YouTube has restrictions based on what people can say and certain words people can use. But you know, got to move around that, make sure I don't violate any terms. So that's why I got to call it a pandemic instead of other words. But anyways, before I get started, I always wanted to say that I'm going to be going off about this like business money stuff, how to help people understand the like the business situation better, how they can use this information to really start or enhance their own business. So, like, anytime I'm talking, anybody has any business questions, anyone has any information they might like to bounce off of me, see if I can shed some light on anything. Yeah, just send out your business question. Yeah, you don't have to be too specific. Just a general idea of what you're trying to do, what you're trying to pursue, how you're trying to grow. So, really, yeah, just anything that you could use some advice on, improvement on. So as always, yeah, I'm doing these live shows. I like doing the live more than the videos. So that's how it goes for now. Until how I get the situation up, I can put the videos up more often. But like I said, I like the live thing, the real live thing. So yeah, going getting into what I'm gonna bring you. And as always, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button because I'm coming in with new information steady. Hit the bell notification so you can stay in tune to the station. And smash the likes if you haven't already. Smash it up. Big up the likes, big up yourself, big up the world, big up money, big up wealth, big up health, big up knowledge. You don't have to go to any college. So yeah, getting into the very first thing, getting into the number one trending thing right now. This is not just like what the newspapers want you to be aware of. This is the number one thing that people have been inquiring about, people have been searching for. They're wondering about the J. Crew situation. So J. Crew is a business owned by the J. Crew Group, and they basically are a conglomerate of retailers that sell different brands of clothing, and they're more upscale. Like a lot of the pictures that are used for the articles talking about it, the business articles, they're showing the J. Crew locations in places like Manhattan, places where you would expect to see more of the high end retailers. So yeah, this is a pretty big company, and basically, yeah, it's the first national U.S. retailer to file for bankruptcy protection since the corona. The thing I can't talk about by that name was has forced a lot of these stores to close. So this shouldn't really be like as big of news as it is, in my opinion. It shouldn't be really any surprise because this is a company that has had a really, really high, crazy, in my opinion, level of debt. And if anything, this should show you if you're concerned about getting into business. Basically, you could business laws, I don't know about other countries, but I know the laws decently in America. This goes to show how much monetary trouble you could get into as a business, how many mistakes you could make, how many lenders you cannot be able to pay, how much debt you can have, and still you can get protection. You'll survive. Your business won't go out of business. A lot of very successful people have bankrupted many businesses. Some of them were able to survive, some of them weren't. But at the end of the day, just know that as a person, you don't have near as many protections as you have as a business, and that's the main thing. Is why when you put a business out, why people put a business, register a business instead of just like having their business, done through their own name and their own taxes, is because once you have that separate business entity, like here's you as a person, here's your business, as long as that's, a business entity and it's registered business, that business could be in debt for like billions of dollars. You could get, bankruptcy, but it's separate from you. So basically, there's limits that people can't take, your assets. People can't take your money. Like the bankruptcy, you could keep a lot of the money you made from that business could disappear, but because that's separate, people can't touch that, like MC Hammer. But unless you got parachute pants and you can fall at a slow rate, if something happens to you as a person working a job, even doing like side hustle stuff and not having that registered as a business, I mean, it could just be like one little thing where like somebody doesn't like what you're doing, some big player, they decide to like drop a lawsuit on you, see you as competition, and they decide, hey, this person can't fight this. You could be bankrupt overnight as a person, and that would be a lot worse for you. So really, yeah, getting into this with the J Crew, and yeah, anybody has any comments on this specifically? Anybody has some information to bring to the table? Go ahead, feel free. This is live, so you know, basically, yeah, they've begun to file Chapter 11 proceedings in federal bankruptcy court, and they have made a deal with some of their lenders to basically take about $1.65 billion of debt that they owe them and turn it into equity. So really, the J. Crew thinks that this bankruptcy isn't gonna end their company. They believe that they'll be able to go through bankruptcy. They'll be getting basically like a lot of money from the economy to stay going, even though this is not like a really like an isolated thing. Like this is a lot of businesses that are probably going to be, a wave of them going through the same situation of bankruptcy. But they're all going to be writing it off to like all the coronavirus put us out of business. But if you read between the lines, if you look a lot deeper, this company has had ridiculous amounts of debt, like ridiculous amounts of debt even before the coronavirus. Um, Man, I keep forgetting, like, I can't say that word, but whatever. Yeah, I mean, I already did, I guess. I'll just try not to. So difficult because that's like everything. But anyways, so yeah, yeah, they've had like, so they're going to continue to do operations. They're going to continue probably their online stuff because I'm guessing that their like stores are closed. And basically, what the main articles are saying, that they don't have evidence directly that J. Crew is doing this, but what a lot of big companies do is they use bankruptcy to basically like get rid of debt and liabilities that they can't afford. Um, and then they'll kind of go and like do some spring cleaning where they'll like get rid of some of their unprofitable locations, scale down on things. But I mean, why should they like, as a business person, like why would you put the like whichever bankruptcy, why would you put your lenders, why would you put everyone through this when you already knew you had tons of debt? Like if this were an individual person, like, and they owed a lot of people debt, like people would not be getting their money back in most cases. Like, and where does this money come from? That's another thing to look into for another day. But basically, yeah, they're going to be able to use this bankruptcy to stay alive and not have to pay a lot of the money that they owe people. And yeah, so like, how much did they owe people? Like, even before this, like when they took out huge loans, but so it sounds like they don't really even have their books. Like even if they do have their books right, they're probably not going to give accurate numbers. But people are guessing that they have liabilities between 1 billion and 10 billion. So yeah, and I can't believe any business that big doesn't have their books right, that they don't know the exact number. But it's just the like who's okay, so the basically, like, obviously don't want to go too much into it right now, but the government works off of they set the laws based on like these lobbyists, people like that. So basically the bigger the company gets, the more money they have to pay political people in power to make the laws like better for them. So people working like the regular jobs, the people who are suffering the most, they don't really have I mean, the politicians like are supposed to be there for everyday people. Like that's politics is supposed to be public service. However, if you're a huge business and you can pay them to make the rules in your favor. So basically what I'm getting at is like if you know this, if you know that the system's set up for, basically protect businesses at all costs, and businesses have all these like benefits and everything like that, why not register a business? Why not start a business? Why not take your things you're passionate about, things you like to do as hobbies, and just turn that into a business? People actually, a lot of people used to do that in a way where they wouldn't even plan on making an income, and the government had to come and crack down on that. But really what happened was, I don't remember any of these people really getting punished. They just changed the rules, because like what you would have like some like CEO billionaire or millionaire who just bought their yacht, and they go out and buy this big yacht, and then they say like, well, I'm starting a yacht business. And then they'd never make any profit because they're just using the yacht for their own personal gain. But they're saying like, well, this yacht's a business. So then they're like writing off all these expenses and stuff. And I mean, when they're writing that off, basically taxes, like who it's the everyday people who pay taxes that are going into these tax cuts and everything like that. So I mean, yeah, it's just like that's how it's set up. Like, I'm not saying like fight against the system. I'm saying like if you can't beat them, then join them. I'm saying like look at how the system is set up. Look at how you can benefit to this. Like, if you start a business, if you do something like that, like everything is pretty much in your favor. Like you have so many more benefits, but nobody is really taught this in like public school system. I've done a lot of like I'm really curious as to people who have become successful in business, and talked to a lot of people in my lifetime that are business owners. And the majority of business owners I talked to, they started their business because they had a family member, usually a long line of family members who had started businesses before them. So they had somebody, to model after, somebody to like personally step in and help them, somebody to like tell them all these benefits that I'm telling you. Um, but yeah, it's a lot rarer. I've seen that somebody who has no, history in their family, or like social circle of becoming successful business people. It's pretty rare that somebody just decides like, hey, I'm going to start a business. I don't know how to do it. I don't know anybody that can really help me, but I'm just going to do it. But those people usually become successful too. Like, yeah, what I've seen is like, even with myself, when I first got into business, I was like, yeah, this is going to be so difficult. But the more I learn, the more I see like how it works and everything. Really what's difficult to me is doing the 9 to 5 thing, getting, the employment thing. And yeah, that's 100 times more difficult. Rush hour traffic, all that stuff, than actually starting your own business. And not only is it more difficult, but it's not as fun. So basically, yeah, J Crew started in 1983, uh, but they didn't have any stores. Their first stores opened in '89. They always made higher end, higher market clothing, gear, whatever you want to call it. And then they had a $3 billion deal that closed in 2011, which was, basically like more money injected into their business, basically probably a loan. Um, but however, even though they've been getting these big loans, they've been accumulating a ton of debt. So even by 2010, it had $50 million of long-term debt, right? And then as of like uh, February of this year, that had grown to 1.7 billion. I mean, we're talking like in 10 years, they've gone from 50 million to 1.7 billion in debt, right? Now, at what point is this that this is a perfect opportunity for them, for a lot of things like, publicity, things like that, because, they can say like, oh, well, it's because of the pandemic thing. So, oh, I just noticed the comment. How's it going, Catherine? Uh, how much should you be making before you start an official business? Um, Really, like, you don't have to be making anything. Um, you could look at different situations. Maybe, there's certain fees that you would have to pay depending on what state you're in to start a business. Um, my first businesses that I started, the main business that I did, I didn't have a business registered until a few years after I did it. And I remember going to like entrepreneur meetups and entrepreneur like just entrepreneur type, like go and like talk to a bunch of people. And I talked to multiple lawyers that specialize in like doing business setups for companies and stuff like that. And basically what I got from like asking them is like, there's certain fees, like even if you do an LLC, that's going to cost you less in taxes as if you were to do a corporation, especially for smaller people. But in most cases, this is all like general. In most cases, you'd have to look into it specifically for whatever business model you want to use. But basically, the main thing is like, so a lot of people were being told by these investors. Investors were telling people, well, we really, we'd rather do business. If we're gonna like invest in a business or like buy out a business or buy a percentage of a business, we want it for it to be a corporation. So like the more I talk to these like lawyers who do the like, the corporation, who can basically like help people turn their business into a corporation, they're like, yeah. They basically told me like, okay, if you have to pay extra to have a corporation right now, um, there's no harm in just waiting until you actually have investors. And then once that investor commits to putting money in, then switch it over to a corporation. So basically, you don't have to have any money. It's all different. Like maybe you would want to be, especially if you're not making money, there's not much, the less money you're making, the less risk you're taking. So if you're not really making much money, I see less and less reason to actually like go and set up a business. But then again, that depends on your business model. If you're doing anything that you have a lot of liability risk, that's the main thing. Because my first business, like I didn't have much liability risk, very little, if any. I didn't have any physical stores, any place somebody could get hurt at. I didn't have any employees that would need to like file any kind of like thing against me. So basically, it depends on your situation. It depends on the risk you want to take. But I would say like, if you can go without it, look at what it costs. Like I know the last business in the last state that I LLC that I registered, it costed like $50. So I mean, what's $50 is going to save you any kind of like worry that you might be liable for something. But really, no, I mean you could like start the business up. This would be like the optimal way to do it, right? In my opinion. So you could start the business up, and then basically once you're making money, once you start making income, you could take that first income you're making and then put that money into like the business startup cost. Put that money, say you need an office, into your office, because once you're making money and then you're using that money back into the business, then you're writing that off for taxes. As opposed to if your business is not making money, you're basically using money out of your own pocket to start up the business. So yeah, I would say depending on what you're doing, but really like you don't need to start it out. You don't need to start it right away. You can wait till you make some money. Yeah, no problem. Hopefully that gave you enough information to answer that question. So yeah, getting back to the J Crew thing I was talking about. Um, yeah, I mean $1.7 billion in debt, but yet they blame the coronavirus. Man, I can't say that word. Yeah, so really they blame the pandemic. And then they're gonna get a lot of money from taxes, whatever. But who knows? Maybe they won't survive this. Maybe they will need to close down, go out of business. That's going to be the most interesting thing that I'll be watching for, that I'll be looking at, because they'll probably be like, the first of many businesses, like I was saying before, that's going to really like have to go through this process. So if we see that, they get, bailed out, whatever you want to call it, and they just keep doing business as usual after this, with maybe scaling down a little bit, then like a lot of other businesses are probably watching this, and if they have a lot of debt, stuff like that, that they probably had for at least 10 years, as in the case here, then they're like, okay, well, look, these guys were able to do it, and they got bailed out basically, so now we're going to be able to get bailed out too. So yeah, my guess is like, a lot of businesses are going to be watching this case right here, and they're going to be saying, okay, like if these guys file this stuff, bankruptcy, and they don't get much help, and they get closed down, then maybe it's not a good idea, because all these bigger businesses are in positions where they can just get more loans, even when they have billions of dollars in debt, which is crazy. But when you're a huge business like that, and you're profitable, people, there's always people who would write you a loan, especially if you're really in trouble, because then, of course, you're going to be paying more and more interest. Like the worse you need the loan, the more these people understand that, and the more interest they're going to be able to make, the more money they can make off the loan. So yeah, they're saying J. Crew's saying that uh, because of their store closings, they have not seen uh, or they have seen a huge like sales decrease. So they've had less people shopping, and they were planning on doing an IPO for one of their brands, which they would have used to pay down debt. Like, okay, that's another thing. Like, that's crazy right there. So you've got, a company that says they were planning on, who knows if this is the truth, planning on doing an IPO, taking their public company so that people could invest in the stock, and then they were going to use all that money to pay down debt. And then I mean, with their history, like, are they going to keep on taking on more debt? But this is how the system works. This is why you have people that have, you know, bankrupted multiple businesses, and they're able to still, they realize that, hey, I can just like do what I would consider to be shady business dealings, and take more risk to make more money. But if it doesn't work out, they pretty much walk away clean, and then their employees, the community the business was in, the taxpayers all suffer. So people realize, like, a lot of successful business people, and yeah, I don't think this is a good thing. I think this is bad. I think this is a flaw in the system. So like a lot of successful business people are like, hey, what's the big deal? Like, if I just bankrupt another business, then I'll just start up another one and get more loans and then bankrupt that one. No big deal. So that's kind of like a mindset that people have out here, which, obviously, if you think like that, and you think that, I can just, take risks for my own benefit, and if they don't work out, then other people suffer, and that's no big deal, then I mean, yeah, I mean, I think there's a problem with that. Like, a lot of should be made in the system as far as I'm concerned, but I'm not a politician. I'm not trying to be a politician. I'm not trying to be the one out here to set the rules. I'm just trying to become successful with my own business ventures and help other people become successful with their business ventures, and trying to stay on top of what's going on, trying to stay on top of the trends, trying to stay on top of how these businesses operate. Uh, so J. Crew, the most recent fiscal year, they basically lost $78.8 million, right? And that was an improvement from the 120 million they lost the year before. Uh, what somehow their income was 250 million. So you're making 250 million dollars income, but you're still losing like 120 million dollars. I mean, I could look it up, but I'm wondering how much the CEO of this company is making. You know, how much is this person making when the company's like struggling that bad, and they're just taking loan after loan out, and now they're like filing for bankruptcy. Like this is like the system that we live in, but I mean, there's so much money out here, so you just got to know how it works. Like basically, J. Crew has not done anything wrong legally. Like they're following all the legal rules, but look at how much money they're able to, you know, get away with basically losing. And I mean, that's going to be the main thing. Like I was saying, are they going to be, is this going to break them? Are they going to disappear? And then even if that happens, what happens if J. Crew just disappears and it's other brands that is conglomerated with? Do the owners go out and just start a new brand the next day and get new lenders like nothing happened because they know how the system works? I mean, that's something I'll be watching for. That's going to be where it gets interesting. So, yeah, looking at the next big business trending thing that's going on right now in the world, basically, a lot of people are searching for American Airlines stock, and that's being tied to really like all the airlines, the stocks. And I've been talking about these airline stocks. I've already made like pretty good profit. I mean, just in the last month, like when it bottomed out the second time, like some of these have doubled. The majority I got was American Airlines. Um, but basically, yeah, obviously because of what's going on right now with pandemic, these airlines are losing a lot of money. Like I've already talked about, we already know that the government said they would step in and help the airlines. They know the airlines are like necessary for keeping the economy going. But you look at it and how come? Okay, so you got all these different airlines, and then you've got the majority of these airlines don't have it that should have been making like tons and tons of money. And I believe it was Southwest Airlines who charges pretty much the lowest fees out there as far as airlines go. And they have by far the biggest amount of savings for like some kind of like bad thing to happen. So like Southwest, because of that, their stock dropped the least of these major airlines because they had the most money saved up. So okay, how is it that the airline company that charges the least money for fares has the most money saved up for something bad for a rainy day? And how is it that, these bigger companies that charge the most, that have like the better services, that are nicer airlines, however you want to look at it, they should have been making more money, really. But then how come they have less money? It's because of this whole system, the way the business is set up, because these business owners know, like, hey, we're pretty much essential out here. Like, it's history showing like we'll get bailed out. We can mess up, we'll get bailed out. We can still pay our CEOs however many millions of dollars a year, and then if we mess up, then the taxpayer is going to pay for it. So basically, uh, the big reason people were recently, just the other day, even though they've been searching for airline stocks and American Airlines stock for since the crash is basically American Airlines and a lot of other airlines dropped more than 5%, which I mean, since the crash has started, they've been making like five over 10% moves in a single day. So basically their 2020 losses, they're down about 60%. Um, so basically this is due to downgraded rating, saying that basically like they have different financial ratings and everything like that that people use mainly when they're investing in companies for like data. And these financial ratings gave these airlines a downgrade, saying like the future is uncertain on travel demand. Okay, well, they're not saying like how far in the future, because if you look at like a month from now, yeah, I would say it's really uncertain. But I mean, look at like a year or 5 years from now. Come on, like you don't think people are going to be back to like the airports are going to be just as full as they were before? I mean, I do. I think that, the airline, people will start traveling again, especially right now, because I mean, look at it, look at the airline prices. Like as soon as people feel more comfortable with traveling, and if the airline prices stay low, like people will just, you know, travel even more maybe than before. Who knows? Like the airlines could get even, this could be something that the airlines take a big hit at the beginning, and then really before it's all over, then they could, or by the time it's over, they could even have an increase. So that's really why this is like a really controversial stock right now, these airlines. But yeah, at the end of the day, the main thing I'm thinking about is like American Airlines. Some of these other airlines have their value has dropped so much, and looking at their charts over time, you can see that they've had times in the past where there's been a lot of volatility, and they've always came back. They've always bounced back. I mean, this would be one of the like without any question, I mean, the government's already talked about they would bail out the airlines. I mean, I know that I would pretty much bet money that that's going to happen. So basically, like, all it takes is for one, like, financial rating, Barclays in this case, to say that the future is uncertain on travel demand, which everybody already knew, and then the price the next day drops by like 6%. So I mean, looking at this stuff, like this is like as an investor, like I'm like, okay, like if I hadn't already bought into it and already been like holding the position in American Airlines, even in this case, if I didn't have other stocks on my list that I would buy, like in the future, I would look at this as like, okay, well, this is a great time to buy because it just went down 6% based on the fact that people think it's uncertain. Not much else as to how far in the future it's uncertain. But I mean, we're talking about major airlines. I mean, this is something where like, okay, people are afraid, right? You can see the fear. You can see that people see that and they're like, oh, it dropped down a grade or whatever it is in this case. So they're like afraid and then they go and sell. Well, that's the time that you want to buy, just as like um the opposite, if like they were at all-time highs with their prices and everybody's saying like, oh, you should buy these airlines, they just got upgraded, and they're just going to keep making more money forever and ever. Once you hear the media talking like that, that's when it's like, okay, maybe I should think about taking some profits, right? And that's like another video for another day, like how to take profits when it comes to like investing and stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot to it. But most importantly, always is knowing when to buy is more important than when to sell. So also, a lot of people have been searching Disney. Disney's had a lot of interesting things with their CEO stepping down, allegations that were made, people in the Disney family talking down about Disney, saying that they don't really agree with the direction it's taking. So yeah, there was some, definitely Disney's always had some like weird things that they find, that weird situations where they find themselves in, where it's really questionable about their motives. That's Disney though. Like, look at that was a very creative person, man. That Walt Disney who started Disney. I mean, but other people take over when he's gone, and who's to say if he would have ran it like that? So, the original Disney idea, obviously, that's huge. That's like had a huge positive impact on the world. But anyway, yeah, Disney fell too, not as much as the airlines. Disney was back towards the end of last year. Disney was in the news a lot when they started their Disney Plus streaming service. They were going to take on Netflix, and when Disney Plus first, was like announcing that it was going to launch, like I remember the price was going way up, and then when Disney Plus launched, they didn't really get the market that they were expecting, and they had some issues, and basically like their stock went down. And then it was shortly after that where they had more issues, and the CEO resigned, and yeah, all that stuff I was talking about. So yeah, very interesting stuff with that. But then again, I mean, I don't know too much about how much money Disney has stored up, but I gotta imagine with how big Disney is, how many like different methods of income, especially passive income. Like, oh man, Disney, as far as businesses go, I would give them like an A+ for like diversifying with passive income. I mean, they got so many different ways that they're doing passive income, but I would just imagine that like Disney, I'd be super surprised if they ever went out of business. Like they'd have to do a lot wrong with how many, they lose their theme parks, they've still got their movies. They lose their movies, they've still got their streaming service. They've got so many different areas where they're making money. Um, so you've also got Tyson Foods was a big company that has been trending. They had one of the bigger uh, price drops. Their stock fell about 8%. Basically, there was due to earnings. So like earnings is another thing. I would rather do like a whole video about earnings. But basically, what happened was we had a lot of earnings reports last week. Um, Kind of like you can see where the stocks kind of like had a momentum shift. Was right around the earnings time, which I mean, I would guess like you know personally that like a frozen food company, when people are all staying home and buying stuff from the grocery store, that they would have an increase. And they did. The company reported 77 cents in adjusted earnings per share. Um, okay, yeah, so they did have an increase. It just wasn't as much. It was expected increase of $1.04. So they didn't meet the expected increase, but they still had an increase. So just because of that, like the stock price dropped a lot. But this goes to show, like, I mean, you have some companies that are like totally like gonna get hit really hard, like these like retailers, and they're gonna probably be fine. Like they'll probably just like owing people less money, and get more loans at the end of the day. But then you've got like companies that are really like essential right now that are probably getting increase in business that are real important. Like food. Um, Although, yeah, a lot of companies, Tyson has had like bad press in the past. But yeah, they've uh, they basically had to close some of their plants due to outbreaks of the pandemic, and they're saying that this is really why they saw the decline um, in their earnings. Which I can't remember. I remember reading articles about how certain like food processing plants. I don't remember whether it was Tyson or which ones it was that they had really bad outbreaks. I mean, of the pandemic, which would make sense because it's probably a lot of people working really close proximity to each other, just standing there all day. I'm guessing these places are probably colder temperature, probably setting up a climate for some kind of pandemic to really thrive in. So yeah, that really like I mean Could and then you look at that like, okay, knowing that they knew that the pandemic was coming and that they had like optimal conditions for it to thrive, like should they have, you know, made some kind of like adjustments when it sound I don't know if they did. I don't want to be speaking on stuff I don't know about, but this is just like how my mind's working, how I'm wondering about this kind of situation, which like I pretty much like know from watching and like conversating with other business people that this is the kind of stuff they think about when they look at other companies, when they look at their own companies. So yeah, it's really tough to say, but really, I mean, just looking at it like another situation, like okay, their stock drops 8%, they're still making a profit, and it just wasn't as much as people thought. Looking at the situation right now and looking at how they're set up to be like really strong and how they're not taking a hit because of it, but yet their stock price dropped like, right now since the crash, 7.8% is not a little bit, but I mean, everything's fallen for the most part a lot more than that. But if you were to say, if Tyson Foods lost 7.8% in one day, like a year ago, like that would have been like I would imagine they would have been the number one news article. Everyone would have been talking about that, and everyone would have looked at that as a huge buying opportunity. So yeah, I mean, you just got to be able to see the opportunities when other people are fearful. And like I was saying, you're fearful when people are greedy and vice versa. But at the same time, like keep a level mind so that you don't get like caught up in the greed or the fear yourself. Like you don't have to actually be fearful. You don't actually have to be like greedy. Like you can just be aware of when other people are like this and then use that to your advantage without having to like put yourself in a greedy or a fearful mindset. You can just stay like really level and really just cool minded, cool headed, cool laid back. So yeah, going on to the Netflix, the Microsoft and the Amazon. Amazon especially has had a lot of publicity recently due to many things. But yeah, the Netflix, Microsoft, and Amazon, these are the ones that went up. So yeah, Netflix went up 3.1%, Amazon 1.3, Microsoft 2.5. Now these are like Facebook also 1.4. So like these are companies obviously that are, people being at home using the internet more. They would make sense. People are using these companies more in this type of situation. However, like look at the amount that they're going up is like, relatively not that much compared to how much these other companies went down. But yeah, you got the situation, so like, okay, these are pretty safe companies to be invested in, right? You can just see that there's less risk and there's going to be less of a reward. However, looking at like everybody has a different like investing scenario depending on like stage you are in life, how much money you already have invested, how well you understand investing is going to really determine a lot. But yeah, I mean, you just got to be aware of stuff like this, be aware of the opportunities, staying tuned to what's trending, and you can see like, okay, well, what is working right now, what isn't, like how can I play that into any kind of business that I'm trying to start. So yeah, not really going to look too much into actual like markets other than what I already was talking about. I can see like Bitcoin had its run up and now it's kind of cooling off, but it's hard to say is the run up over. Um, Usually after a run up like that, in a market, when you see just like a parabolic run up after like a slow, steady run up and then like a huge parabolic, usually that's like the end of like a run up. So right now it's just kind of like cooling off. But will it take another leg up or will it go down? That's the question. So yeah, you just got to be aware. Just be aware of like what these situations are. So yeah, just something to watch for. Um, really do more on that when it makes another big move. But yeah, I think that's about it for right now. Anybody has some kind of like comment or question, feel free. Comments open. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Coming in with new information steady. Forgot my water today, so my voice is going away because I haven't had any hydrate since I started talking. So yeah, I gotta end this for today. Hope you got some value off of what I had to say. Always trying to come through with new info with no delay. Subscribe already if you haven't, because I'm coming in with new information steady, and hit the likes. And that's about it for today. I gotta get some water, rehydrate. I'm out.